Mic check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 1 2. Shalom family. Shalom, shalom, all praises. Put sevens in the chat if my audio is good. Salakia for the delay. But we about to get a good one in today, man. We got a good one in today. All praises. All praises for the audio being good. Let me just double check on my end. Okay. One day, family, we're going to have a whole new setup, man. Telling y'all, we're going to have a whole new setup. We got a good class today. We got a great class today. So pull out your paper, your pens, your notes. Pull out your papers, your pens, your notes. We got a great one today. We got a good one. Okay. Ahayah versus Yahawah. Shout out to Sister Abigail if she's in the building. Shout out to Sister Abigail if she's in the building. She asked about this some time ago. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get it going, man. Get it going. So we got a good one today. So shalom to Sister Justice. Shalom to Sister Aaliyah, Sister Liz, my brother Malachi, Ashar will walk Yahweh. Good to see you, my boy. Brandon in the building. My boy Brandon. Brandon, if I'm not mistaken, you located in Dallas, right? Issachar, sister, shalom, sis. Shamar, Israel, shalom to everybody, man, and everybody that's logging in. Everybody that's logging in. All right. Oh, Alabama. My brother's from Alabama. All right. Victor, shalom to you, Victor. How do you pronounce your name? I might pronounce it wrong. Lay. I'm gonna just say Yah's chosen. I'm gonna say Yah's chosen. Sister Aaliyah in the building. Shalom, sis. Oh, shalom. I know you, sis. We Facebook friends. Shalom to my beautiful wife, Raya. All praises. Sister Cherish, man. Shalom to everybody, man. We got a great one today. So y'all come on in. What's the name of the Most High, man? Is it Ahayah, Yahawah? What is it, man? Is it Jehovah? Is it, Yahweh? What is the name of the Most High? We got a great one today. Warriors of Zion, Shalom, Judah tribe, Brother Will. Everybody tapping in. That's what up. That's what up. Well, that's what up. That's what up. All right. So y'all, we're gonna got a good one in today. All right, let me start off with this, man. Let's go to John chapter 4, verse 24. I'm gonna start off with this. It says, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. All right. So I know a lot of us, when we was in the Christian church, we just used to call God. Put sevens in the chat if you used to just call God God. Like, you thought God was his name. Put sevens in the chat if y'all was like me and you thought God was his name. Kwaranap, shalom, good king, my good brother Kwaranap. Put sevens in the chat if you just thought his name was God. Okay. All right. Yeah, I did too. I thought his name was God. Then when you got a little bit deep, we was like, oh no, it's not God, it's Jehovah, right? You got like you got your Jehovah Witnesses and all of that. They used to make you feel like you didn't even know the word. They used to be like, nah, it's Jehovah, right? So, we thought his name was God, right? But coming into the truth, you learn a few things, right? So you learn. And John chapter 4, verse 24 says, God is a spirit, first and foremost, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Okay. So we want to worship him as closely as we can. Now, I want to give a disclaimer before we jump right into it, because we got a lot. I want to give a disclaimer. We don't know everything. Okay. Let me go ahead and pull this up real quick, man. Let me go ahead and pull this up. All right. This is what I want y'all to not forget. Okay. Let's get 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 9. All right. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 9 says, for we know in part and we prophesy in part. Right. So we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. So I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm going to be very transparent with y'all. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is the infallible way that you pronunciate the name of the Most High, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that. Now, we do know the Most High's name is centered around what we know as today the tetragrammaton. We're going to get into that, right? The tetragrammaton, which is the 4 consonants or the 4 letters that we're left with, right? Because we know that in history, Israel, so they wouldn't take his name in vain, which is to try to attribute his name to any false god or false deity. They tried to only keep like the 4 letters of his name, which is commonly referred to as the YHWH, right? We're going to go into some history on that. So don't worry. By the end of this whole lesson, you're going to understand that completely. But we still know in part, we prophesy in part because the pronunciation has been largely lost, all right, through the annals of time, okay? The pronunciation has been largely lost through the annals of time, right? So I'm going to always keep it straight with you guys. I'm never going to tell you. Now, like I said, we understand that the tetragrammaton is the variation or the letters of his name, the YHWH. We know that for a fact, right? But in terms of the pronunciation of it, you know, it's been lost over time. So we're going to get how we get the different variations of the Most High's name. First and foremost, is it Ahayah? Is it Yahawah? Is it Yahweh? Is it Yahuwah? Like, what is it, right? We got all of these different names that's floating around. And first and foremost, I'm a student like you guys, right? I don't profess to be the most affluent in Greek and Hebrew, but what I do is I study the best that I can so that I can be able to articulate what I believe. And one thing I do know is I go into the history and I make sure that I can verify everything with historical evidence and backing. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to analyze, right? Ahayah versus Yahawah. So let's jump into it. Let's get Genesis chapter 4, 2 and 4. All right. Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. All right. Hold on to y'all seats. Take good notes, man. Take good notes. Make sure you got your note taken ready because you're going to learn something today. Let's get Genesis chapter 2 and let's read verse 4, right? But before we do that, let me just make sure I clarify something for a second, okay? Want to make sure I clarify something. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right. Let me share my screen. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I put something out first, okay? Now, you have 2 appearances before I share my screen. We have 2 appearances of the Most High's name. Matter of fact, I can share it now. Let me go ahead and share. All right. Share my screen. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. All right. So we in the game now. All right. We in the game. We in the game. Let me go ahead and make this the slideshow. So, let me just make sure that it's sharing in a proper way. Okay, perfect. So before we get started, you must know, right? The first textual appearance of God's name is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. Okay. That is the first textual appearance. Okay. The first explanation of the Most High God's name, you can find that in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Okay. So the difference between a textual appearance and a divine explanation is in Exodus chapter 3, that is where the Most High first expounds on what his name is. And in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, that is the first textual appearance, right? Meaning when we break it down into the different transliterations, right, or translations going into actually taking one text from one language to another language, transliteration is dealing with an actual, phraseology, right? So when you see the first divine explanation of his name, it's in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. That's where the confusion comes in with Ahayah and Yahawah, okay? That's where the confusion come in with Yahawah and Ahayah, okay? And we're gonna get an understanding of that, okay? So let's go ahead and let's pull up Genesis chapter 2, verse 4 real quick. So Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. I'm teaching class. Hold on one second, family. Okay. It says, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. And the day that the Lord God made earth and heavens. All right. The earth and the heavens. So this is where you see, when you see that word Lord there in all caps, it goes into the tetragrammaton. Okay. Which we're going to get. All right. But let's go from there now. Let's go to Exodus chapter 3, verse 4. Okay. Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Salakia. Exodus chapter 3, and let's read verse 14. All right. It says, and God, so now this is where the beginning of all the confusion comes in. Okay. We're going to get into that confusion. So Exodus chapter 3, verse 14 says, and Moses said unto the Most High, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers have sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel. So you see here, this is where we get the whole translation of Ahayah, right? I am that I am. We're going to get an understanding of that today, right? But let's keep reading. I am have sent me unto you. Let's read verse 15. And God said, moreover unto Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. Now, when you look at verse 15, what do you see there? You see that word Lord in all caps. Okay. Now, if you go into the ESV study Bible, it's going to tell you, right, that word Lord there in all caps, it translates into Yahweh. Okay. Yahweh, or more specifically, it translates into the tetragrammaton. So what do we have here? We have in verse 13 where people just normally stop at verse 13 and they say, see, his name is Ahayah. I am that I am. But they don't read down into verse 15 where it says the Lord God of your fathers. Now, let me be honest with you. This doctrine of Ahayah, it mainly comes from, and I'm just being honest, it mainly comes from trying to separate certain camps, certain groups. I believe anybody can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe GOCC was one of the major camps that started using the word Ahayah. So you got different Israelites, right? If I go back into like Israelite history 101, right? The furthest we could go back is like the early 1800s, mid 1800s, in terms of like Frank Cherry and things of that nature, right? Of Israelites that actually were professing themselves to be, you got Wentworth Matthews, Frank Cherry, so on and so forth. So those are the early Israelites. The furthest we could go back is the 1800s. Now, from the 1800s, that's when you move forward and you get into like in the 60s. I'm just kind of skipping a little bit, right? You get into the 60s where you get the original One West, that's what they call it, right? And they actually learn from, I believe, Abba Bibbins. Okay. So Abba Bibbins was the teacher of the original founding elders of original One West ISUBK. And he passed down the knowledge, and then that's where we get ISUBK, which is a school, I believe, in Harlem. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I believe it's Harlem. Now, from there, right, in the 60s, you get going into like the 90s and things like that, early 90s and so on and so forth. Around that time, you had like a lot of different splits and variations. The split could have started happening. I wasn't there. This is just what I've been hearing from my elders. And, shout out to my elders, Ra'im, IQ, shout out to Priest Daniel Allah, all of those brothers that have a very, very deep history with the original school, right? I wasn't there, so I'm not saying that I know the story like 100%. This is just what's been handed down to me. So when you had like the different variations and the different splits that happened, right? Different other groups that came up, GOCC, IUIC, what we had today, GMS and so on and so forth. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe GOCC was one of the main camps that had the split that actually started teaching the word, the name Ahayah, right? Now, a lot of camps, just being honest, a lot of camps started to try to separate themselves, right? It was like around that time, a lot of people just wanted to have the best doctrine and the best knowledge, right? So a lot of camps wanted to separate themselves doctrinally from the original One West. There was a lot of things that the original One West wasn't even teaching, right? I'm gonna be honest, you know what I mean? Worshiping, from the stories that I heard, worshiping men, worshiping the elders, calling men David and all that, right? So, the school went down, people separated, people wanted to create their own doctrines. One of the main doctrines that came up was the name Ahayah. Now, largely the name Yahweh was being taught. Okay, Yahweh was being taught when you go back to the original One West. Okay, that was the name that was being taught. Ahayah, later came, and then all these different doctrines to kind of try to destroy the name of Yahweh came about. It's a pagan god, so on and so forth, which none of this can be verified. I'm just being honest. None of this can be verified to be factual, dealing with the Most High's name. And we're going to actually get that dealing with the tetragrammaton, right? So what you got with the tetragrammaton, you have the YHWH, okay? And this is the tetragrammaton, right? Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this. In the oldest Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible, right, Tanakh, which is Old Testament, God often appears as 4 Hebrew letters, right? You can also pronounce this, which is in the Paleo, Yod-He, Wad-He, okay? Yod-He, Wad-He, right? That will be in the tetragrammaton, how you would pronunciate the name, right? This form or these 4 letters form is called, this 4-letter form is called the tetragrammaton, meaning 4 letters, right? So tetragrammaton literally just means 4 letters, okay? And you can actually see the tetragrammaton, all throughout all type of archaeology. We're going to prove that today. In Exodus 3:14, when Moses asked God for his name, right? The reply is, this is actually Ahayah, Ahayah, right? I am who I am. The related verb form to be is linked to the tetragrammaton. So Ahayah is, now let me just put this out here. Ahayah is linked to the tetragrammaton. But it's not the tetragrammaton. It's linked to the tetragrammaton, which we're going to get into it, because the phrase "I am that I am" is first person. Yahweh is third person, and that's important when we get later down the line, right? So it is Ahayah just comes from the first person form, and Yahweh comes from the third person. They essentially mean the same thing, right? Just one is first person, one is third person, right? So it says the related verb form to be is linked to Yahweh. So many scholars render it Yahweh, roughly meaning he causes to be or he is. Okay, so this is where you get Yahweh. Now this is all in Exodus 3:14, right? All right, this is all Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Okay, now the tetragrammaton, God's personal name in the Hebrew Bible, appears as 4 letters, YHWH, called the tetragrammaton, meaning 4 letters. Ancient Hebrew originally had no written vowels, okay? So the ancient Hebrew originally had no written vowels, right? I'm not here to argue whether that's a fact or not. I'm just here stating the facts that is widely accepted by the scholars. But what we do agree on is that these 4 letters, the YHWH, is the tetragrammaton, okay? It is the tetragrammaton, okay? Now, the tetragrammaton, which are these 4 letters, all right, can be found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Mind you, Ahayah, Ahayah, right, cannot be found in archaeology or any biblical manuscripts in terms of this is God's name, okay? So let me put that out there. In terms of this is God's name, what you're going to see represented there, if you go into the Dead Sea Scrolls, you're going to see the tetragrammaton, right? When you go into the Great Isaiah Scroll, you're going to see Yahweh there, or the YHWH, which is the Paleo script, which is the tetragrammaton, right? in the Masoretic text, okay, you're going to have there, right, which in the Masoretic text you have the Aleppo and the Leningrad codices or codex, which preserves the Most High's name, right, over 1,000 times, which is the tetragrammaton. So you're always going to see those letters there in the ancient manuscripts, YHWH, okay? That is the tetragrammaton, all right? That is the tetragrammaton, okay? So we see that there, all right? Hold your questions. I see somebody said, so what is the name of the Canaanite false god? We're going to get into that. Don't worry. I'll touch on that a little bit. But let me dispel any type of, oh, it's a Canaanite first false god, so on and so forth. First and foremost, I hope everybody understands that the Hebrew Israelites have a very large, rich history in Canaan. Okay, let me just say that. The Hebrew Israelites have a very large history in Canaan. Okay, matter of fact, if you go into the history of ancient Egypt, right, where we settled in the city of what the Bible calls Goshen, or what scholars would call Avaris, you can actually see a Canaanitish, right, people group that lived in that area. Now, why is this important? Because Israel was largely in Canaan. Israel was largely in Canaan. Now, the funny thing about it is, let's go to the law real quick. Let's go to Exodus chapter 20. Israel would go off. So when people pull this up, this is not actually a slight. Like, oh, what about the Canaanite God? Right? Which that is also speculation. But if I was to entertain that speculation for a second, this is why the Israelites wanted to leave or lose the name, right? It really doesn't hit the biblical narrative of what happened with the name of the Most High God, because when you go to Exodus chapter 20, and let's actually read verse, let's go to Exodus chapter 20, and let's actually read verse 7. Let's get to the point. So this is Exodus chapter 20, verse 7. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Now, when I was a Christian, what I thought taking God's name in vain was saying, oh my God. I thought saying, oh my God, was taking his name in vain. Okay. Actually, taking his name in vain is actually taking his name and attributing it to another God. And we see that the Israelites actually did that even in the wilderness. What did they do? They took the golden calf and they said, look, when Moses was in the mountain, they took a golden calf and they said, look, this is your God that brought you out of Egypt, right? This is your God. And they placed the Most High's name on those calves. So Israel had a propensity of doing that. This is why we only have the tetragrammaton. All right. This is why we only have the tetragrammaton left, because Israel had a history of doing that. They had a history of trying to take the Most High God's name and attributing it to a false God. So when you say a false God in Canaan's name, well, that's not far-fetched, seeing that the Israelites went off, had a propensity to go off, had a propensity to take the Most High's God name and try to attach it to an idol, and they dwelt in Canaan for years. They dwelt in Canaan for years. Okay, this is why we have the tetragrammaton left, because they did not want, in fear of doing this, they did not want to take the Lord's name in vain. Okay. All right. Let's read. So let's go from there. All right. So now archaeological inscriptions. Right now, this cannot be argued. This is a fact. You cannot argue with archaeology. You cannot argue with history. Those are the two things you cannot argue with, that you can verify. You do not see the name Ahayah attached to the Most High God's name in any ancient history. You don't see it in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You don't see it in the Isaiah Scrolls, right? And you don't see it in the Masoretic texts, okay? In terms of widely what was known as the tetragrammaton, okay? So, and that's just a fact. All you got to do is just fact check this. Fact check everything I say tonight, right? So we're going to go into it. So now you also have, so these are manuscripts. These are biblical manuscripts. But now we have the actual archaeology to actually prove these things, these inscriptions, right? So the first archaeology find that I want to get into, right? The first archaeological find that I actually want to get into is the Mesha Stele. All right, the Mesha Stele. All right. So, or the Meneptah Stela, right? Whichever one you, however you want to pronounce it, Mesha or Meneptah, right? Or not Meneptah, Mesha. I'm thinking of Salakia. I'm thinking of I'm thinking of Egypt, Salakia. This is the Mesha Stela, all right? So now the Mesha Stela mentions Yahweh's name or the tetragrammaton, right? You also got the Kuntilit, right? Which is the blessings by Yahweh of Samaria, right? You have this, that's fine, right? You got the Ketef, right? Or AKA the silver amulets, right? Priestly blessings with Yahweh. And you have the Lakish letters, okay? And we're going to go into these different things so you guys can see these different inscriptions. Now, the first thing I want to get is the Mesha Stela, right? Or Stele, right? So now, this is actually where you can actually see the tetragrammaton. This engraved stone contains a royal inscription by Mesha, king of Moab, during the 9th century BC. It celebrates Mesha's victory over the sons or descendants of Omri, right? Probably Jeroboam. All right. So Mesha was a Moabite that took down the king of Judah, right? Omri or Jehoram. All right. So in the Stela, though, you'll find the YHWH. Now, I don't know if you guys can see it here, right? Here's a red line that's pointing to it, right? And remember, you read Hebrew from right to left, okay? You read Hebrew from right to left, okay? So, you see right here, Y. I don't know if y'all can see my mouse. HWH, okay? Now, again, you cannot argue. This is a tetragrammaton. We're going to get into the pronunciations in a minute. But what we know for a fact is that the tetragrammaton is the Most High's name. Okay? It is the Most High's name. All right. And don't worry, we're going to explain why Yahweh, I wouldn't say Yahweh wouldn't be correct. I wouldn't say that. I would just say Yahweh is a form of a pronunciation that the scholars have given us through antiquity. And I'm going to get into that. So I wouldn't necessarily say Yahweh is incorrect. I would just say it is one of the pronunciation, because remember, the pronunciation of the Most High God's name has been lost because of what I explained earlier of them not wanting to take the Lord's name in vain. So don't forget that, okay? Don't forget that. So we're going to get into the different pronunciations, all right? Yahweh, we're going to get into Jehovah, so on and so forth, all right? So this is the Mesha Stela, right? Now you see in the Mesha Stela, you can see clearly the YHWH, okay? All right. So now what do we have? Let's move on. We have the Ketef. All right. Ketef or Katif. Hinnaman, silver amulets, right? Jerusalem. It dates back to the 7th or 6th century BCE. It was discovered in 1979. Archaeologists excavating burial caves at Ketef, just southwest of Jerusalem's old city, found 2 tiny rolled silver scrolls. So yeah, a nickname of this is also the silver scroll. So this was found in the city of Katif, Hinninam, right? And it's also named the silver scrolls. Okay. Now, what's found on these scrolls, after painstaking unrolling, the scholars read the Hebrew text nearly identical to number 6, 24 through 26. Okay. So this scroll actually goes back to Numbers chapter 6, verse 24 through 26. Okay. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. My elder always reads it. Let's actually go there. Let's get Numbers chapter 6, verse 24 through 26. So the silver scrolls, it is the Numbers chapter 6, verse 24. Let's read that right here. And everybody, I want you to fact check this. Go back, do your homework. Let's go ahead and get that. Let's get Numbers. And let's get 6 and 24. All right. So it says, the Lord bless thee and the Lord keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. So when they found this inscription, it contains the oldest known biblical text, about 400 years older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. So this actual inscription that was found is actually 400 years, or dated to be 400 years older. All right. When you see it, it uses the tetragrammaton, the YHWH, written in the Paleo-Hebrew script. All right. It demonstrates that the priestly blessing and the divine name were already part of the Israelite liturgy in the late First Temple period. All right. So here is like a kind of like a picture description of it, right? So this is the silver scroll, Ketef, and this is number 6, 24, 26, and this is, it was found, rolled up, and it literally has the inscription of number 6, 24, 26, and you can actually see the tetragrammaton there. All right. All right. Do you see the tetragrammaton there? Okay. So somebody said, wait, so saying his name wrong is saying his name in vain? Or what does it mean when it says don't use his name in vain? What it means is, when it says don't use his name in vain, it literally means to take his name and attribute it to any other god. Okay. That's what it literally means. Okay. And you see the Israelites actually did that in history when they actually tried to take the name of God and place it on calves and different deities when they were in the wilderness, when Moses went into the mountain. All right. So so let's go there. So this is all archaeology proving what's God's name, okay, or the tetragrammaton, I should say. It's proving that his name comes from the tetragrammaton. All right. It's a Paleo-Hebrew scroll, right? Kind of in the shape or form of like a necklace, all right, engraved in the rolled silver scroll, and it has a prayer on it, which is Numbers 6, 24 through 26. So it's kind of crazy that our people did do the same thing we do today, to, you know, get a chain or something like that, and you walk around with the chain on your neck, but you have a scroll on it. So it's nothing different than when we have chains on our necks and we have biblical inscriptions. But the point that I'm pulling out is that the tetragrammaton was found on this. Okay. The Lachish letters, all right. The Lachish letters, southern Judah, all right, 588 BCE, unearthed at the ancient fortress city of Lachish. These are Istrika, right? Istrika is a inked pottery shard. So this is a pottery. This was found on pottery, dating to the time just before Babylonian conquest of Judah, right? So this is before the Babylonian conquest of Judah. So this is the Most High's name found on pottery. We're going to see several letters end with phrases like, may Yahweh cause my Lord to hear good news, explicitly invoking the name of everyday military communication, provided vivid eyewitness snapshot of Judah's final days before Jerusalem's fall. So you got different things that are on these pottery shards, but one of the things that are on these pottery shards, which is including like different military provisions and so on and so forth, communications and so on and so forth, you actually had the name of the Most High God, Yahweh, on there. Okay, you actually had the name of the Most High God. The tetragrammaton was found there, okay, which is the YHWH. Now, is this a coincidence, guys? We still have not yet found the word for Ahayah, right? In terms of the Most High's actual name, represented anywhere in archaeology, right? And if anybody has that archaeology, give it to me, right? We're going to get the word Ahayah, but what we do have is we have we have Israelite archaeology found in different time periods, family. We have Israelite archaeology found in different time periods of the tetragrammaton, which goes into the name. All right. Okay. Moderators, if anybody is being a scoffer, please get rid of them because I'm teaching right now. If anybody wants to ask questions after, you can ask questions, but I need everybody to pay attention. Okay. So Lachish, right? I think this is Ostrakhan, right? Or just a pod. It's just a pottery, right? That's the word for the another fancy word for pottery, which you see the YHWH on the pottery. This is what's found, the inscription that's found on the pottery. To my Lord Joash, may Yahweh give you, or Yahweh give you, good news at this very time. Who is your servant but a dog, that my Lord shall remember his servant? May Yahweh give my Lord first knowledge of anything you do not already know. So this is what's found on the pottery. Okay, this is what's found on the pottery. Okay, so we can see that. All right, here's actual real pictures of the pottery here. I just wanted to make sure I put that out there, right? So here's actual real, and you guys can look this up. It's not hard to look any of this up, right? You guys can go and look this up. But now we have the tetragrammaton found on pottery now, ancient pottery. So what do we have? We have the tetragrammaton found on a necklace, which is the silver scroll. We have it on the Mesha stele, right? And now we have it found on this particular pottery, okay? So let's go from there. All right. Kuntulet, right? A Jude Kirbet El Quam, believe, right? Often confused with Katara. All right. Now, this was actually found, right? It's a desert way station with storage jars and inscriptions blessing people by Yahweh of Samaria and his Ashare, right? Showing early Israelites worship practices, right? So here it was found in a tomb, right? Kirabet El Quam, I believe, or Quom, I believe. I could be pronouncing it wrong, but this is actually found in a tomb. It is an inscription, and in the tombs, these inscriptions were found invoking the name of the Most High, which is the tetragrammaton, which is for protection. Okay, so this was actually found. Now you can see it right here, right? One of the things that was found, one of the inscriptions that was found, and you can actually see the YHWH. I don't know if you guys can make it out, but if you go research and look up this, you will see that this was found. It dates back to the 8th century BCE. Okay, it was found in the 8th century BCE, and and it just goes along with all of the other, and it also proves that Israel existed too. It also proves Israel existed as well. But these are the early inscriptions of the tetragrammaton that we can find. So not only can we see the tetragrammaton actually found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the Masoretic text, in Isaiah scroll, right? We also see it found on pottery, on necklaces. We see the Most High's name, or the tetragrammaton, related to the Most High God's name, right? In different time periods, found in different areas, and so on and so forth. So these facts cannot be overlooked, right? When you get into the tetragrammaton, I have yet to see anything with the Hebrew rendition of Ahayah found on any pottery, any papyrus, anything in relation to it being his actual name. Description, we're going to get into that, but his actual name, the only thing we'll find is the tetragrammaton, which is the 4 letters of the Most High God's name. And the reason why we only see the tetragrammaton, which is the 4 letters of the Most High God's name, is because Israel wanted to forget. All right. So what are some of the takeaways, right? These inscriptions are among the most important archaeological witnesses to the use of the name Yahweh or the tetragrammaton or Yahweh. The same name later written as the YHWH or the tetragrammaton in Paleo-Hebrew and translated as the Lord in many English Bibles. So in the English Bible, when you see that word Lord in all capitals, that word is going back. It's a translation or transliteration of the Most High's name. Okay. So I hope I'm making sense. Put sevens in the chat if everybody's following along. All right. Somebody said the one before this one had a letter J in it. What date? Not sure which one you mean. All of the archaeology I'm showing you has the tetragrammaton. Okay. But put sevens in the chat if everybody's understanding. Okay. I don't want to lose anybody. All right. So we see it in archaeology. Okay. We see it in ancient manuscripts, Dead Sea Scrolls, Masoretic texts. All right. So now let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay. So it's without a doubt that the Most High's name has something to do with the tetragrammaton. Okay. Now we got to get into pronunciation and variations. All right. Likely pronounce Yahweh based on linguistic and historical clues. We're going to get into that. Jehovah, right, is a medieval hybrid of the YHWH plus Adonai vowels. We're going to explain all of this. Where did the word Jehovah come from? Where did the word Yahweh come from? And how did we get the word Yahweh? Okay, we're going to get all of this. Okay. Now, this is where we get into the nitty gritty of the pronunciation. Okay. So we have the Greek here. Okay. You have Yahweh, right? I don't know if you guys can see it. You have Yahu or Ehu, and you have Yahweh. Okay. So it says the pronunciations of Yahweh, Ehu, and Yahweh are not definitively known. Okay, this is going to the Greek. Follow me here, guys. This is going into the Greek. As these are ancient Greek and Latin translations of the unvocalized Hebrew tetragrammaton, okay, the name of God. The original pronunciation of the tetragrammaton was lost by the time these transliterations, all right, were recorded. The pronunciations given below are reconstructions based on historical scholarship and the sounds of the languages used to write them. They should be considered the best estimates rather than certainties. So these are not certainties, but these are estimations. These are the tetragrammaton in the Greek. So if you see it here in the Greek, you have the Yahweh or Yahweh, right? You have the Yahu or Eau, and you have the Yahweh. Okay. Sounds familiar to Yahweh. We're going to get how we get that actual pronunciation of the tetragrammaton. Okay. So if you look here, right at the bottom, here's the Greek. Remember, the Greek is different. So when you see that word, the I there, that is for the Y, right? In the Greek. So in the Greek, it will be pronounced. Let's get into the first pronunciation, Yahweh. Okay. You find this pronunciation with Theodoret in the 5th century, which is a 5th century Christian bishop, and he recorded the Samaritans pronounced the divine name as Yahweh or Yahweh. The pronunciation would have likely been Yahweh or Yahweh. The B sound beta in Greek had shifted to a V sound by the time Theodoret heard it. However, classical Greek would have pronounced it as a B. So in the 5th century, this Christian bishop, right, he first records the name as Yahweh or Yahweh. Okay. This is in Greek. Okay. Does everybody understand? So this is in Greek. So you have Yahweh or Yahweh. Okay. That's one pronunciation that we can see within the Greek text. All right. Of the Most High God's name of the tetragrammaton. This is important, right? You also have Yahweh or Ayau. Okay. Right. You got the Yahweh or the Ayau, right? This is a Greek and Latin transliteration of the tetragrammaton found in early Christian and Gnostic writings. Okay, so this is Yahweh or Ayau, right? And ancient source mentions that the name was pronounced Ayau, or Yahweh, which would have sounded like Yahweh. Okay, so this, you get this variation from Greek and Latin, and it is pronounced in the Greek and Latin Yahweh. Okay, Yahweh. Now this is important, because you got to understand how I'm giving you guys the history of how we got the actual pronunciations of the name of the Most High. Okay, so now we have Yahuwah or Yahweh. Okay, this transliteration recorded by Clement of Alexandria around the 2nd century CE offers a longer version of the name Yahweh. Okay, this pronunciation is often used to support the reconstruction of the tetragrammaton as Yahweh. You see, so where do we get the pronunciation of Yahweh from? We actually get that pronunciation from this particular Greek variation. All right, that Clement of Alexandria recorded around the 2nd century CE, which is pronounced in the Greek Yahweh. Okay. Okay. Yes. And they did have a hard time. Yeah, they would say be instead of way a lot of times. Right. That's why when we actually went here, right here for this Greek variation is Yahweh or Yahweh. Okay. So now when we get down to this textual variation, which is recorded by Clement of Alexandria, all right, Clement of Alexandria in the 2nd century, he actually wrote the tetragrammaton as Yahweh, okay, which that's where we get the word Yahweh from, all right, or the pronunciation, I should say, not the word, I should say the pronunciation. We're gonna see it. So ancient transliterations. Before Jews stopped pronouncing the name out loud, outsiders tried to represent it in other languages. Greek writers in the 1st millennia BCE recorded forms such as Yahweh, Yahweh, so on and so forth. These constantly point to 2-syllable sound close to Yahweh, Yahweh, or Yahweh. Okay. So what the scholars did was they took the pronunciation of the Greek. Okay, they took the pronunciation of the Greek, right? And you can actually find this in the Greek Septuagint, early fragments, right? You can find these different pronunciations in the Greek Septuagint, right? And written by Greek and Roman writers and Christian writers, right? The Yahweh, the Yahweh, so on and so forth. So all of this is found in the Greek writings, right? So what they did was they took these pronunciations, right? Because remember, and let me get this real quick too. Let me actually get this, because a lot of people don't understand this. You got to remember, let me get this real quick. This is just off the top. Isaiah 28:11. Okay. Isaiah chapter 28 verse 11. For with stirring lips and another tongue will I speak to this people, to whom he said, okay, that's all I need. So the Most High God had a prophecy that he gave through Isaiah, and he said, with stammering lips and another tongue, he will speak to us. So this is all prophecy. So somebody tells you that you can't read the Greek and all of this stuff, you're actually lying, because our people were scattered all over the place. Matter of fact, the history of the Greek Septuagint is important, because when our people got assimilated into the Greek population and became Hellenes, or known as the Helleniste, or the Hellenes, we actually, a lot of our people started to speak Greek. Our people actually in Alexandria, Egypt, which was a Greek province, we actually wrote the Hebrew scriptures in Greek so that our people could be able to understand it. So when people go against the Greek and things like that, you can't really do that, because the Most High God first and foremost said that he will speak to us in another language, I should say. And our people, they spoke many different languages. They spoke Latin, they spoke Greek. All right. They spoke Latin, they spoke Greek, they spoke all type of different variations of languages. Our people did, right? So the Bible had to be translated into all languages. You wouldn't even know how to read the scriptures if you didn't have it written. You wouldn't even be able to, most of us wouldn't even be able to read the scriptures if we did not have the scriptures written in an English Bible. And that's a fact. Okay. So when you look at these Greek translations, like in the Greek Septuagint, you'll see these different variations of the tetragrammaton pronounced. Yahweh, Yahu, all right, Yahweh, okay? You'll see these different pronunciations in the Greek. So what scholars did was, all right, so when you look at, so what scholars did was, let me go back here. What scholars did was they actually used the two-syllable sound, and this is where you get Yahweh from, okay? This is where you get Yahweh from. So they use the two-syllable sound, right, from the pronunciation that they were able to get from the Greek language, and this is where you get the word Yahweh from. Okay, does everybody understand that? Put sevens in the chat if you understand that. You get the rendition of the pronunciation of Yahweh from the Greek translation or transliteration of the tetragrammaton. Okay, so what they did was they took the pronunciation, the sound of the word, and they said, okay, it's Yahweh. Does everybody understand that? Does everybody understand that? Okay, come. Now, how did we understand that it was Yah? How did we understand that it was Yah? Because if you go to scriptures like, matter of fact, I think I touched on it. Okay, hold on, let me see. I think I touched on it. Actually, yeah, I touched on it. So I don't want to jump the gun. So let's keep going. I don't want to jump the gun. All right. So that's where you get the word, or the pronunciation, I should say, Yahweh from. It comes from the Greek, right? The translators using the Greek for the pronunciation to get the two syllables, Yahweh. Okay. Now, you got the Masoretic vowel marks. Okay. Now, this is where you get, I want everybody to follow me. This is where you get, right, between about the 600 to 1000 CE, right? Jewish scribes called Masoretes. Everybody familiar with the Masoretes or the Masoretic text? Added a system of dots and dashes to the consensual text to show vowel sounds for readers. So what the Masoretes would do is they would put dashes, right, for the vowel sound for the readers. The reason why they did this is because when they came to tetragrammaton, they didn't want people to guess the true vowels. So they didn't want people, they wanted his name to be inconspicuous, right? This is what the Masoretes wanted. They wanted his name to be inconspicuous. So what they did was, so they inserted the vowels of Adonai, A-O-A, right, around the consonants YHWH as a visual cue. So in their translations, when you read the Masoretic text, when you see the tetragrammaton, you're going to see the vowels for Adonai, which Adonai means Lord. Now they put that there as a visual cue because they didn't want you to be able to pronounce, or they wanted to be inconspicuous of the Most High's name. So they will put these consonants there, right? These vowel cues there, right? See these vowels and remember to say Adonai, not the actual name. So what they wanted you to do, they wanted you, when you seen these vowels, the AOA with written in the Masoretic text, they wanted you to use the word Adonai. Okay, they wanted you to use the word Adonai instead of trying to pronunciate his actual name, right? Because they viewed the name as sacred, pursuing to Exodus 20, not taking the Lord's name in vain, right? Now, why is this important? Because in the medieval times, right, later Christian scholars who encountered the Hebrew manuscripts didn't realize this was a cue. So they didn't realize that this was a cue, meaning that those vowel systems was placed there so the reader would be able to understand that I'm going to say Adonai here in representation of the Most High's name. So they combined the consonants of the YHWH with those inserted vowels, producing something like Yahweh, okay? I mean Yahweh, okay? So what they did was they took the vowels that were in the Masoretic text and they said, we're going to put the vowels that are by the name of the tetragrammaton, we're going to put the vowels and mix the vowels within this name. You get the pronunciation. And this was a misunderstanding, actually, where you get Yahweh, okay? So it says in Latin script, the Hebrew Y became I or J, and W became V or U, giving Jehovah, and eventually in the English form, Jehovah, excuse me, and eventually in the English form, Jehovah, okay? All right, so Jehovah or Jehovah, right? This is where you get the word Jehovah from. So what happened was when the medieval scholars at the time were trying to translate the Most High God's word from the Masoretic text, when they seen the Adonai vowels next to the tetragrammaton, they put the vowels within the tetragrammaton, and this is where you get the word Jehovah from, okay? This is where you get the word Jehovah from, okay? Yeah, somebody said, I have a question. I'm still learning knowledge, so I can't bring forth much knowledge, but is Greece, the Greeks, Hellenist race? No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So this is actually how you get the word Jehovah. So you get the word Yahweh from the Greek pronunciation of the tetragrammaton, and you get the word Jehovah from a misunderstanding when the Bible was being translated, okay? So for an example, the hybrid first appeared in Latin works in the 13th to the 14th centuries. Early English Bibles, e.g. the 1611 King James Version, and a few verses use Jehovah, helping it become familiar with the Protestant tradition. So when the Bible began to be translated, this is where you get the word Jehovah from. You get the word Jehovah from the mix of the vowels of Adonai mixed with the tetragrammaton, and you get Jehovah. All right. All right. That's where the word Jehovah comes from, and that's where Yahweh. So Yahweh is the Greek pronunciation of the tetragrammaton from their understanding, and Jehovah. All of this is hyperstance, by the way. Okay. Any scholar would tell you this is just the best renditions of pronunciations that we could come up with. So Jehovah is not even, you know, the word Jehovah is just a misunderstanding. The word Yahweh is them trying to take the Greek and find a pronunciation. All right. Does everybody understand? Okay. I'm going as slow as I can so everybody can understand. Make sure you go back and do your own research on all of this. You know, it's there for you. All you got to do is just research, where did the name Jehovah come from? Research, where did the name Yahweh come from? So on and so forth. One thing that everything has in common, One thing that everything has in common is that the tetragrammaton is in the center of it all. Okay, all of the different pronunciations. Okay, so Jehovah is a medieval fusion of Yahweh's or the tetragrammaton consonants with Adonai's vowels, created when later readers mistook a scribal reminder for the true pronunciation. Modern scholars therefore view Yahweh as the best reconstruction of the ancient vocalization, while recognizing Jehovah as a historically important but linguistically artificial form. So Jehovah is linguistically artificial because it was a mistake. Modern scholars, typically everybody will go into Yahweh as the actual pronunciation because it's more it has more linguistical authenticity because it comes from the actual Greek. Okay, it comes from the actual Greek. All right, so this is where you get the two different pronunciations of the tetragrammaton, Yahweh and Jehovah. All right, all praises. So Theophoric, all right, are Theophoric names. Theophoric just simply means short forms like Yah. Okay, so like when you see just Yah, our personal names such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hezekiah, Preserve, Yahu, or Yah. This is also how we understand that Yah is in the beginning of the Most High's name, because when you look at these ancient Israelite names like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hezekiah, all right, you see the Yah is within their names. Okay, you see the Yah is within their names, right, and is attached to the Most High's name. You also see this within the scriptures, right? So let's go to Psalms. Let's go Psalms 68 and 4. Let me show y'all. Let's go to Psalm 68 and 4. So you'll see short variations of his name. Psalm 68 and 4. Look at this. Psalm chapter 68. And let's read verse 4. It says, sing unto the Most High, sing praise to his name, extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name Jah, or Yah, because there is no J in the Hebrew, right? So it would be Yah, right? And rejoice before him. So you'll see this is called a Theophoric, I believe. Theophoric name, which just means a shorter version of the name. Okay. You'll see it in different names such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, so on and so forth, right? So this is where you get, and this is also how we know, because you'll see this even within ancient literature and so on and so forth, where they'll shorten the name of the Most High and they'll say Yah. All right. So this is where you're getting all of the different nicknames of the Most High, Yah, you know, Yahweh, Jehovah, right, throughout the history, right? So the tetragrammaton is the ancient personal name of the Most High. Evidence spans manuscripts, archaeology, and translations. Strong scholars consensus for pronunciation close to Yahweh. So a more broader pronunciation that is actually accepted among modern scholars would be Yahweh. All right, everybody would typically accept the word Yahweh, but we're going to see where the word Yahweh actually comes from, because I do believe that the elders had the spirit on them to get the word Yahweh, right? And we're going to go into that. But Yahweh is the Greek pronunciation, right? And I can understand why the elders would actually go away from the word Yahweh, or the pronunciation, I should say, not the word, because it's just a tetragrammaton, but the pronunciation of Yahweh, they would go away from that because they wanted to get closer to the ancient Paleo roots, which we're going to get into the ancient Paleo roots. Okay, we're going to get into the ancient Paleo roots. All right, so if you're just tuning in, the word Yahweh comes from the Greek pronunciation, and the word Jehovah, right, comes from actual misunderstanding of the vowel system of Adonai mixed with the tetragrammaton. All right. So now let's get into the nitty gritty, man. Let's get into it, y'all. So Ahayah versus Yahawah. All right. Why is his name not Ahayah? Okay. But Ahayah is an attribute of the Most High. Ahayah is an attribute of the Most High. But why wouldn't it grammatically be or properly be his name? Well, it's easy to understand once we break it down. So it says the idea that God's name might be Ahayah comes from mainly from a particular reading of Exodus 3:14, where God tells Moses, Ahayah Ashar Ahayah, right? I am who I am, or I will be who I will be. So remember, we went to Exodus, right? In the beginning of class, we went to Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Let's actually go back there. Get into it. Exodus chapter 3. Now, and again, I gave you guys the kind of abridged version of the history. Anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, and this is no shot to any other Israelite camp, but I believe that GOCC was the first camp to make the name Ahayah like the, you know, like big the way it is. I know a lot of people, it's kind of funny when you go back to your history, you could tell where people come from, depending on how they say the Most High's name, from Yahweh to Ahayah. But Yahweh came about from when the split happened, and camps would try to go away from the original one west, and they tried to make different doctrines to go against, because they wanted, you know, everybody to follow them as far as having the strongest doctrines. You know how our people are. And Ahayah was one of those doctrines that came about in the split, where it's not Yahweh, it's actually Ahayah, and Yahweh is a pagan and all that, because they were going against the original, what the original one west taught. A lot of this stuff, a lot of different doctrines that come up, y'all will find that a lot of different doctrines that come up was just because it was like different beefs that happened back in the 90s, right? Back in the 90s and all of that stuff during the time of the split, right? So the Ahayah was actually a new, like, there's no scholar, modern or ancient, that you can show Ahayah being the name of the Most High God. I'm gonna say that again. There's no ancient scholar that will show you or tell you, ancient or modern, that will tell you Ahayah is the actual name of the Most High God. Is it an attribute? Yes, Ahayah is an attribute. But we're going to do some basic grammar, because when the brothers that left from the original one west, what they did was they ignored grammar off of the sake of, we want to have a new, fresh doctrine. Ahayah being one of those new, fresh doctrines that came about. Y'all got to go back and do your history. I've done my history. I've done my history of what happened. I've asked my elders about what happened and how did the different doctrines come about. At this time, you got to think about it. The original one west, ISUPK, was like one of the biggest things ever in terms of the Israelite community. I mean, you did have in the early 1800s, which I gave the history of that earlier. In the early 1800s, you did have cats like, you know, and in earlier dates, you had Frank Cherry, Wentworth Matthews, Abba Bibbins, so on and so forth. Then you had the elders that actually learned from Abba Bibbins. And then when the elders learned from Abba Bibbins, they left from Abba Bibbins, and then they created ISUPK, okay? The original ISUPK. And then from there, you know, it was a lot of infighting, so on and so forth. I'm not going to get into all of that. I wasn't there, but from what I hear, it was a lot of different disagreements on doctrines. All right. So when you look at that, okay, so when you look at that, you'll see when, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was GOCC, but correct me if I'm wrong, I can be wrong, which they were the first camp to actually start pushing Ahayah and started to attack Yahweh. Okay. This is all like 90s, you know what I mean, type things that happen, right? So this is where you get the whole clash of Ahayah versus Yahawah. Because everybody, I don't care what Israelite group comes up, I don't care if you're not even in the camp, you learn through One West, and that's a fact. Everybody learned through One West. You cannot, there is nobody that did not learn through One West, whether directly or indirectly, and that is a fact. Because at one point in time in the 60s, it was only One West that was pushing this truth as big as they pushed it. And a lot of your doctrines will expose you of that, because a lot of the different doctrines come from when the split happened. And that's just the fact. And that's just the fact. You can't argue the facts. I mean, are there some doctrines that One West had that I don't agree with? Absolutely. But the facts are the facts that we all stem from there. All of us are children of One West, right? If you want to get down to it in terms of us understanding this knowledge. So Ahayah came from the split. All right. So it's just the facts, y'all. Don't shoot me. It's just a fact. So it says the idea that God's name might be Ahayah comes mainly from a particular reading in Exodus 3:14, where God tells Moses, Ahayah Shar Ahayah, I am who I am, or I will be who I will be. The Hebrew word Ahayah indeed sounds like Ahayah. In some English phonetic renderings, and literally means I am or I will be. But here's why scholars and the vast majority of Jews and Christian traditions do not treat Ahayah as the divine name itself. So we're going to see why. First and foremost, because of the tetragrammaton. First and foremost. All right. First and foremost, the tetragrammaton, you know, but even with grammar, okay. And I think Abigail said something. Abigail said, so Ahayah is the Most High speaking from his point. Yeah, bingo. Now she kind of jumping to the point, but you're absolutely right. So you got first person versus third person, okay? So Ahayah would be in the first person. So Ahayah is first person, right? So this is where grammar comes into place. God instructs Moses in the very next verse, right? Exodus 3:15, because what people don't understand is when you go to Exodus chapter 3 and you read verse 13, it says Ahayah there. But when you read verse 15, it says, and God said moreover unto Moses in verse 15, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob have sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. People ignore the all caps there for the Lord, which literally translates into the tetragrammaton, which goes into the Most High God's name, which links back to either Yahweh or Yahawah, which we're going to get an understanding of where Yahawah actually comes from. But I want you guys to see that you can't stop reading. You have to go to verse 15, and you cannot ignore. Now, you have some skeptics and you have some people, and I'm going to get some more verses too. Yeah, Psalm 68:4, right? Where you have Yah. But at the end, I'm going to give you just a plethora of verses showing the Most High God's name. And you can actually go back to ancient manuscripts. Now, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm not into the conspiracy theory of literally somebody wanted you to worship a false god, so they start putting Yahweh everywhere and all of that, because then we got a problem. We got a whole bunch of ancient artifacts and ancient manuscripts and ancient archaeology being found in random different places. I mean, I'm not into the conspiracy theories and all of that, but now you will have to say that all these ancient artifacts that's being found that have nothing to do with trying to prove the Most High's name, but actually shows just archaeology. Some of it is even of heathens, you know, like with the Mesha Stela, just talking about us and our God. I mean, all of the thousands of years of history that we have showing the tetragrammaton, I mean, your speculations is not enough for me to throw that away. I'm just being honest. All right. I'm just being honest. I'm not willing to throw, because you want to hold on to going against One West so bad, you would throw away all the archaeology. Can I be real with y'all? Y'all wanna I'm not gonna say the word, but I'm gonna be honest. Y'all wanna shit, excuse my language, on One West so bad that you are willing to throw away hundreds of years of history, thousands of years of history, because of whatever beef that happened after the split. I'm not going for that. I'm just being honest. I'm gonna deal with the facts. I'm gonna deal with the history. I'm gonna deal with the archaeology over you. And that's just the facts. So we're not doing that. So Ahayah is first person. This is important. God instructs Moses in the very next verse in Exodus 3:15. This is my name forever, the tetragrammaton, the God of your fathers. The tetragrammaton is third person, usually understood as he is or he causes to be. When humans refer to God, they naturally use the third person, which is exactly what the tetragrammaton represents. So when people talk about the Most High God, they use third person. Okay, they literally use third person. This is important. Grammar is very important in dealing with this. Linguistic evidence, right? Hebrew grammar makes it clear that Ahayah, right, and Yahweh, right, are related forms of the same verb root. The same verb root is to be. So I am, which is to be, or he is, which is to be. All right. I am to be, or he is to be, or causes to be. All right. So that is the grammar. Okay. So the grammar does connect, but it is important to understand that one is first person and one is third person. Grammar is everything, family. Hebrew grammar is everything. And God is typically, when we're describing him, God is typically, not typically, God is explained, or his name, in the third person. When we talk about the Most High God, we talk about him in the third person. Okay. So when you look at the word Ahayah, it's simply a way of saying I am. That's all it is, right? Reflecting God's self-description in Exodus 3:14. Did God describe himself as I am? Yes, he did. The Most High God did describe himself as I am. Now, the tetragrammaton, commonly reconstructed as Yahweh, which we went through that. All right. Okay. Commonly reconstructed as Yahweh, is the enduring personal name given for people to use in Exodus 3:15. Now, I see my beautiful sister Abigail said you have some questions dealing with the Strongs, but you don't dealing with the name of the Most High. You don't even have to deal with the Strongs. The Strongs is just something that is there. The Strong, look, put it like this, Sister Abigail. I don't know if you caught the beginning of the class or not. I don't know if you were here. I don't know if you were here when I first started class, but if you were here, we didn't use the Strongs not one time. What we did was we went into the history of the four consonants or the four letters of the Most High God's name, which is the tetragrammaton. We went into archaeology. We didn't even touch the Strongs, but we went into archaeology because the Strongs is like the least tool that I would use to prove the Most High God's name is indeed Yahweh. Okay, the Strongs is like the least thing that I'm pulling out. What I'm going to pull out is I'm going to ask you to explain why there is a plethora of archaeology with the tetragrammaton, not with Ahayah, but with the tetragrammaton, a plethora of Hebrew manuscripts from the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Masoretic text, even to the Greek text, okay, even to the Greek text that has the tetragrammaton there, and the tetragrammaton where we don't have the actual pronunciation of the tetragrammaton, because if you was here in earlier class, we lost the original pronunciation of the tetragrammaton, which was done purposely because we didn't want to take the Most High God's name in vain, which the Israelites had a custom of doing that, which is taking the Lord's name and placing it on idols, right? And saying that this idol is the Most High God. So in history, we purposely wanted to forget the name and only remember it by the tetragrammaton. Okay. Now, I didn't pull out a Strong's. I didn't have to pull out a Strong's at all. Strong's is the last thing that we pulling out in this topic. We don't got to pull out no Strong's. We pulling out archaeology. We pulling out manuscripts, ancient biblical manuscripts, And we broke down where the pronunciations actually come from. Yahweh coming from the actual Greek pronunciation of the tetragrammaton, or from what they thought was the Greek pronunciation of the tetragrammaton. And then Jehovah is actually a misunderstanding with the vowels of Adonai added into the tetragrammaton, which happened later. So we don't got to go into, like, to prove this point, we ain't, that's rudimentary. All right, the lexicon is rudimentary. You know, there's so many other things that show you what the Most High God's name is, and it's very simple to understand. Again, you know, this understanding of Ahayah comes from the split of the Israelite camps and brothers wanting to create new doctrines and go against and bring something new, and flashy so they could attract new people to say, I got the new knowledge now. Look, his name is not Yahweh, it's actually Ahayah. Look at the new knowledge we got. That's where this whole thing comes from. All right, now look at this. Commonly reconstructed as Yahweh is the enduring personal name given for people to use, Exodus 3:15, and is overwhelmingly supported by biblical texts, Hebrew grammar, and ancient evidence, right? So while Ahayah conveys an important truth about God's self-existent, the name constantly revealed for worship and reference is the tetragrammaton, not Ahayah. I'm going to show you why. Okay. Now, actually, let me go up real quick. Let me see. Did I pass it? Okay. Let me see. Let me go up a little bit. I don't think I put it in here. Okay. Here it is right here. So let me go back. So Ahayah is the first person. Now, let's just use simple logic here. With Ahayah being a first person verb. Okay. Ahayah is a first person verb. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so Ahayah is first person and is a verb, and Yahweh is third person. Okay, they essentially mean the same thing. Let me see. They essentially mean the same thing, which is I exist, or to be, right? He causes, or I am he that causes. So now, if I was going, let's just use it in the grammar with the English. If I was going to tell somebody who the Most High God's name would be, I wouldn't say that the Most High God's name is I am that I am. Why wouldn't I say that the Most High God's name in the first person? Why would I not use the first person to explain that the Most High God's name, to explain the Most High God's name? Why? In the grammar ramifications of what we're talking about. Why would I not go and say, hey, what God do you serve? And I say, oh, I serve I am that I am. Why would I not use the first person? Grammarize. Bingo. Because I am not him. So I wouldn't use the first person to say, explain my God's name, because if I say I am that I am, I'm speaking to me in the first person. I wouldn't. You're absolutely right, Abigail. Grammarize, saying God's name is Ahayah does not make sense, because if I went back into the ancient times and I said that, they'll be like, wait, your God name is you are? Like you are? I am that? That's the first person. I wouldn't speak of the first person. I wouldn't speak in the first person explaining who my God is. Right? Now, why would God in Exodus, I'm going to see if y'all paying attention. Why would God in Exodus, it's very simple. Why would God in Exodus chapter 3, verse 13 say his name was Ahayah? See if y'all paying attention in the chat. Why would God explain or express his attribute as I am, not I am? Why would it make sense for him to do that? Why would it make sense for him to do that? Let me see. Put it in the chat. Why would it make sense for him to do that? He was revealing himself to Moses. Yes. So Ahayah, because he's talking about himself. Yes. He's speaking in the first person. Yes. Bingo. He's speaking in the first person. You would not speak in the first person to God. You guys understand that? This is why. Let me show y'all something. Yes, he was speaking in the first person. He's talking about himself. Let me show you guys an example that they wouldn't use Ahayah in the ancient world. Let me show you. When you go to John chapter 8, verse 58, look at this, family. When you go to John chapter 8, verse 58, and this is when Christ was revealing who he was. Now, this is a whole nother lesson, but in the burning bush, Christ was the one in the burning bush. Okay. I'll do a whole separate lesson on how that was so. But the point for this class is I'm going to show you something dealing with that. I am. Ahayah. Right? Ahayah. I am translates. Ahayah translates into I am. Look at what it says in John chapter 8, verse 58. Yahweh said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. They wanted to, let's read verse 59. They wanted to kill Christ for speaking of himself in the God in the first person. Then took they up, in verse 59, then took they up stones to cast at him, but Yahweh hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. Why would they try to kill Christ? Why would they try to kill Christ if he's just simply saying Ahayah, which is God's name? Why would they try to kill Christ if he's simply saying Ahayah, which is God's name? I'm going to see if y'all learn it. I'm going to see if y'all thinking in the chat. Why? They should have just said, yeah. It's because he was speaking in the first person as himself. You don't speak, grammar-wise, you don't speak in the first person as somebody else. Yes, it's that simple, guys. Ahayah was a flashy doctrine that got created after the split of One West to bring everybody to the brothers that broke off from One West to say we got a flash, but they didn't think about the grammar. They didn't think about the grammar. The grammar doesn't make sense. Why would they try to kill Christ if he simply was just saying the name of God, which is Ahayah? The reason why is because that's not how they recognize the Most High's name, first and foremost. And then second, the Most High was speaking Christ was speaking in the first person. You don't speak in the first person about somebody else. It's that simple. So when you go back to Exodus chapter 3, verse 15, all right, the Most High is having a conversation. Let's read up to verse 13. So when you read it in verse 13, and it says, and Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers have sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? So the Most High responds in the first person, declaring himself, because he is that he is, right? So in verse 14, and the Most High said unto Moses, I am that I am. I'm just me. This is just me. It's a description of his, but this is not his actual name because this is in the first person. You understand? So when you look at that, he's explaining, yeah, I am that I am. But Moses is not going to go to the people, and when they say, who is your God? He's not going to be like, yeah, who is your God, Moses? I am that I am. He wouldn't explain it like that. What Moses would say is, he would say, he is that he is. You see how that works? If I was Moses and I went to tell my people that our God came to save him, they would ask me who my God is. I wouldn't say I am that I am. I would say he is who he is. You understand? All right. He is that he is. Messenger of Christ. But haven't Ahayah always been using Christ as a messenger through the burning bush? Yeah, that's a whole different topic, messenger of Christ, that we're going to get into later. Today, I just want to stay on the name, but we'll get into that. I'll do a lesson on pre-existing Christ for the next class that I do. But what I want you to understand today, messengers of Christ, if you understand, because I'm pretty sure you learned a lot of this from GOCC. Like I said, I believe GOCC was the first camp pushing Ahayah. Moses wouldn't, and somebody already answered it. Who was that? My brother Koranop said they're going to be thinking Moses is God. Yeah, because you're not going to go and say, if they asked Moses who he is, who is God, Moses is not going to say I am that I am, because he's speaking in the first person. Moses is going to speak in the third person and say he is who he is, which translates into Yahweh, or self-existent or eternal. So when the Most High is explaining to Moses, he's telling Moses, yeah, I am who I am, speaking of himself in the first person. Verse 15 says, and God said moreover unto Moses, thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the Lord God of Abraham, the Lord God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob have sent me unto you. This is my name forever. This is my memorial unto all generations. When you go into that word Lord, which is in all caps, it's going to take you back. This is when you can use a lexicon. It's going to take you back into the tetragrammaton. So all of the translators, when they transliterated the name of the Most High God, they wanted to put the word Lord there in all caps. So you can know it goes back to the tetragrammaton. No different than when the Mezorites, instead of putting the tetragrammaton, they will use the word Adonai, or the vowels in Adonai, to let you know that that was the Most High, which Adonai translates into Lord. It's no different than what the Mezorites was doing within the English rendering of the Bible, where they put Lord there, but they're letting you know that that's the tetragrammaton. Okay, makes sense? Put sevens if it makes sense. So the Most High is saying, I am who I am in the first person, and then in the next breath, he's telling Moses what his name is in the third person. All right. Now, does that make sense? All right. Sister Abigail, are you there? Does that make sense? Okay. Don't worry. We're going to get some more proof of this. So right now, what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and let's get where we actually get the pronunciation of Yahweh from. Okay. So where do we actually get the pronunciation of Yahweh from? So let's get to the starting point. So remember, the starting point is the tetragrammaton, which would be Yod He Wah He, or Yod He Vav He, depending on how you want to pronunciate it, right? Yod He Wah He, right, which is the tetragrammaton. Scholars agree the original vowels weren't written, so the exact ancient sound must be inferred. So remember, we talked about this earlier. The tetragrammaton, or the Most High God's name, was hidden, and we only had the 4 consonants, which are just the 4 letters, the YHWH. So you know, we're inferring what the pronunciation is. Okay. So how did the elders of the original One West, and it was taught to them, I'm pretty sure, which, you know, it's crazy how this history go, but if you go far back, you know, all of this stuff comes from somewhere. Where do we get Yahweh from? Okay, so scholarly reconstruction versus modern adaptation. So there's a difference between the scholarly reconstruction. Now, we're not going to talk about Jehovah, because as I told you guys, Jehovah, it was just a mistake. Okay, from the Mezorites using Adonai, the vowel system, next to the tetragrammaton, and then later down the line in the medieval times, they're making a mistake of putting the vowels into the tetragrammaton, which gets Jehovah or Yehovah. Okay, so we're not going to talk about that. That was a mistake. So we don't call him Jehovah because Jehovah was an actual mistake. But now when you get Yahweh or Yahu or Yahweh, which is from the Greek. So historical linguistic data. Okay, so this is a scholarly reconstruction. Biblical grammar, Theophoric names, early Greek transcriptions points to, so remember, Theophoric is basically the name of the Most High God for short, which is Yah, right? Which we pulled out Psalms chapter 68. So that's just the Theophoric is just a short way of saying the Most High God's name, Yah. And then so we get the short way, which is Yah, and then we get the Greek transcriptions, which is how we get Yahweh, okay, as the most likely ancient pronunciation. Okay, so this is how we get Yahweh in the ancient pronunciation. Now, modern groups like us, for an example, reject this consensus and attempt their own phonetic reading of the consonants, leading to Yahawah, often written Yahweh or Yahawah, right? So how do we get Yahweh, which is 3 syllables? Yahweh is 2 syllables. So in the Greek, it's 2 syllables. Yahweh, Yahuwah, right? In the how we did our modern adaptation is 3 syllables. Now, if you pay attention, the Yod He Wah He is actually 3 syllables. Yod He Wah He. Well, yeah, we break it down into like 3 syllables, but it's Yod He Wah He, which is not 2 syllables, right? But the Greek pronunciation is 2 syllables. Okay. So let's see how we get the word Yahweh. So look at this. Reasoning behind Yahweh. Okay, so look. Keeping the Yah, because we understand that the Yah, which is the prefix, we see Yah all over the scriptures. We pulled it out in Psalm 68, where we see Yah. So Yah is there. So we know Yah is in the beginning of his name. Not only that, but when we go into words like Jeremiah, Isaiah, we're going to actually get into that a little later. We can see that Yah is in these prophets' names. Okay. Messenger of Christ asks, are we supposed to speak Greek in Greek translation? It's nothing wrong with speaking Greek. Let me just put that out there. It's nothing wrong with speaking Greek. Okay. I broke that down earlier. Our forefathers spoke Greek. Our forefathers were the ones that translated the scriptures into the Greek because we got absorbed into the Greekist customs and became Hellenistic or Hellenistes, right? And we became Hellenized. And so a lot of our people spoke Greek. So we put the words in Greek. Remember, the scripture says with another tongue and stammering lips will I speak to this people. That's in the book of Isaiah. So remember, it's nothing wrong with speaking Greek. But of course, if we at all possible can, we want to speak the Hebrew. And the most ancient form of Hebrew we have is the Paleo. And when you look at the Paleo-Hebrew with the tetragrammaton, it goes into the Yod He Wah He. Okay, so now, but Yahweh comes from the Greek pronunciation. So we got the prefix, which is Yah. Okay, the rendering of Wah as Wah, rendering the letter Wah as the syllable Wah rather than the consonant W or V, which is Wah, right? So in the Hebrew, it'd be Wah, doubling the final He or Ha pronunciation, the ending as Ha or Ah, right? Sometimes to emphasize each letter. So this yields the 4 syllables Yahawah. Okay, so it'd be actually Yahawah is how they will actually pronunciate it, which goes into the 4 consonants. That's what I meant to say. Yod He Vav He, which is Yahawah, right? Now, how did they get the Yahawah or the Yahawah, right? If you just make it you know, depending on how you want to pronunciate it, Yahawah or Yahawah. You have the ancient Paleo. Okay, so here's the ancient Paleo. Okay, so we have the ancient Paleo here. So this is where you get the pronunciation Yahweh or Yahawah. Okay, so let's look at it for a second here. So you read from right to left. So remember the Paleo. Let's go back up. Let me see if I got. This is the Paleo. This is the tetragrammaton in the Paleo. We went through this, but I'm just going back up to show you guys. Oh, I didn't put it in there. Let me see. Let me see. Okay, this would be the tetragrammaton right here. YHWH in the Paleo. Okay. It's the tetragrammaton right here in the Paleo. So when you break it down and try to put it together with the Yod He Vav He, so Yahweh comes from the pronunciation Yod He Vav He in the Paleo. That's where it comes from. Yod He or Yahawah or Yahweh comes from the Yod He Vav He, which you'll see right here, right? The tetragrammaton. You see Yod right here. This is a tetragrammaton. Anybody can look this up. And I don't profess to be a super Hebrew scholar, but this is very simple information. So you got the Yod right here. I don't know if y'all can see my y'all can see my cursor. So you have the Yod right here. Yod. So that's the Y. And then you have the H. Yod He. He right here. All right. So you got the head. Then you got the Y. Okay. You got the Y right next to the Ha. Or the Yod. Or the Yah. Right. So in the ancient, it will be the Yod. But we understand that it translates to the Yah. More modern sounding. Yod. He. Wad. Hey. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? So you see the Yod, He, Wad, He in the tetragrammaton. What's your question, brother? Brother Abiezer or Elijah Israel, what's your question? What's your question? But this is where you get the Yod head, Wad head. And all they simply did was add a more Yahweh or Yahawah, a different sounding of the Yod head, Wad head, with the newer sounding Yah form. Okay, let me see. I'm letting you guys know the symbols for the tetragrammaton are the YHWH. Okay. YHWH. So you see the Yod. Y'all see that? Does everybody see that? Yod, Hey, Wad, Hey. Everybody see that? And then you see the different way you can pronunciate it at the bottom. So you got the Yod or you got the Yah, right? Ha, which is the H. Wa. Okay. Yahawah. Somebody said they say Ahayah for Christ, but we call him Yahweh instead. Yes, I'll go into Christ's name later. But if you understand the Most High's name, then you'll understand Christ's name. So simply, the elders, they got the Yahweh or Yahawah from the Yod Head Vav He in the Paleo. That's it. It's that simple. Does everybody understand that? Put sevens in the chat. So the pronunciation of Yahweh comes from the Yod Head Vav He. Put sevens in the chat if you understand that. Put sevens in the chat if you understand that. So I tried to break it down as concise as I could. We got a little bit more I'm going to show you guys. Just showing you what the Most High God's name means. Okay. So let me show y'all a couple more things. Let me stop sharing my screen. So everybody understand that? Yeah. And again, guys, I'm not trying to say that the pronunciation is law, because none of the pronunciations is really law. I mean, any scholar would tell you that Yahweh, you know what I mean, or Yahweh, you know, none of the pronunciations are law. So I wouldn't say that it's law, but what I will say is that, you know, it's around the tetragrammaton, and I would lean more towards Yahweh because the elders were going more based off of the Paleo-Hebrew instead of the two syllables of Yahweh, which comes from the Greek. They're going to the Paleo of the four syllables. All right. So that's what it is. You understand? Much love to y'all too. So let me show you guys further. But furthermore, though, we do know what we do understand is that it's not Ahayah. We understand that his name is not Ahayah because Ahayah is in the first person, and we wouldn't talk about anybody in the first person. So we know for sure his name is not Ahayah. But whether you want to pronunciate it Yahweh or whether you want to pronunciate it Yahweh, I don't do Jehovah or Yahovah or Yahweh. I mean, not Yahweh, excuse me. I don't do Jehovah or Yehovah or Yahuwah or whatever the case may be, because that was a mistake. You know what I mean? The word Jehovah came about as by mistake, but the two pronunciations that I would lean on would be Yahweh or Yahweh. And I would stick next to Yahweh more so because they tried to get close to the Paleo. All right. Remember, so there's different you know, the Paleo gets deep, the language gets deep. I'm gonna be honest. The language gets deep. A lot of people go into the language and they go off. So the language get deep. You know, the language has layers to it. But what we do know is the Yod Head Vod Head, which when you break it down, that's where Yahweh stems from, just a different pronunciation of the ancient Paleo. CY. Yeah, definitely. So you see right here, CY, email us at believersoftheway 144k@gmail.com. Email us right there, and then me and you can chop it up some more about the language. Because I don't profess to know it all. Hey, look, I don't profess to know it all. I can learn. You know what I mean? I can learn. I don't know it all. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm just some Hebrew language scholar. I know a little bit basics of it, but what I do know is I know how to trace the language, the name back. I know how to trace the name back, and I know how to research why we have the name we have today. And what I know for what I know for a fact, excuse me, is that Ahayah is not his name. Okay, Ahayah is a description of him, of his name. So let's get more proof of that. So real quick, I want to get more proof of that. Let me see. I want to get more proof of that. So when you go to like let me show y'all something. Give me 1 second. Let me show y'all something real quick. Let me show y'all something real quick. 1 second. Second. This is where it gets fun. You know, because the Most High puts his name everywhere. It's crazy. Or variations of his name, I should say. I'm gonna show y'all a couple things. Let me see. Watch this. So So look at this, guys. So when you guys do your research, and you could just use you could use ChatGPT for this. Let me show y'all something real quick. So look at this. You guys can just use ChatGPT for this. When you look up what the name Isaiah means, notice what it means right here. And you can use ChatGPT for this. Easy. Isaiah is Yeshaya, okay? Yeshaya in the Hebrew. Now, the funny thing is, what do you guys notice about Isaiah's name right here? Yeshaya. What do you guys see? Notice that. What do you guys notice there? Yeshaya. Yeshaya. What do you notice there? Khan. It has the Most High's name in it. Why doesn't it say, it says Yeshaya? Why doesn't it say Yeshaya? Ahayah? Why doesn't it say Yeshaya Ahayah? It says Yeshaya. It means, Yeshaya means salvation, deliverance. You see that? Look at this. Yah, short form of Yahweh. We already went through that. Or Yahweh, meaning Yahweh or Yahweh is salvation. Or if this is some idol's name, why is the rendering of Yah in Isaiah's name? And we know that this is short form. Yah is short form. Let's go back to Psalm 6. Let's go back to see, so we don't even this is very rudimentary. Let's go back to Psalm 68. Let's go back to Psalm 68. So we know Yah is used as a description of his name, a short version or a nickname, if you will. Let's read that in Isaiah 68. Isaiah 68 and 4. Look at this. Sing unto God, sing praises to his name, extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name, Jah, or Yah, and rejoice before him. So you see Yah there, right? Short for Yahweh or Yahweh, right? Look at this. Jeremiah is Yermiah. All right. Yermiah. There it is again. What do y'all see right there? They're going to have to explain why Ahayah's never mentioned in none of these prophets' names. They're going to have to admit that. They're going to have to admit that. They're going to have to admit Jeremiah, it means to exalt, rise up, Yahweh, right? And we see Yah is in short form for the Most High's name. Commonly rendered Yahweh exalts or Yahweh will rise up. See some nuance of Yahweh appoints depending on the underlying root. So the point is Yah. Look at Hezekiah. All right. To strengthen Yahweh or Yahweh. Yahweh strengthens. Strength or Yahweh. All right. Again, some people say Yahuwah. Yahuwah also comes from like a Greek rendering. Okay, we kind of went over that earlier. All right. Let me just show y'all that real quick. Let me just show y'all. Let me go back here. Just so y'all can know, because some people might say, where did they get Yahuwah from? Let me show you. Yahuwah comes from this Greek translation from Clement. All right, Clement of Alexandria around the 2nd century CE offers a long version of the name Yahweh. Yahweh. So some people say Yahuwah or Yahuwah. So Yahweh actually is another way, or Yahuwah, which comes from the Greek as well. So there were different variations of how you pronunciate it in the Greek. You had Yahweh or Yahweh, you had Yahu, and you had Yahuwah or Yahweh. Okay. So some people say Yahuwah, some people say Yahweh, which is just Yahweh. So it's just how you pronunciate it, tomato, tomato type of thing. So that's where, you get Yahuwah from. Okay. All right. Do me a favor, Elijah, Israel, just email us. And then when you email us at believersoftheway144k@gmail.com, then me and you can chop it up. Okay. So yeah, that's where you get the word Yahuwah from. But look, why is the Most High's name not Ahayah in none of the prophets' names? You gotta ask that question. You gotta ask that question. Okay. You gotta ask that question. Let's go from there real quick. Let's get some more. When you go to Exodus 15, so Isaiah, Jeremiah, okay. So look, go to Exodus 15 and 2. Here it is again. So Yah is the short form of the Most High's name. Exodus 15 and 2. Look at this. The Lord is my strength. When you see Lord there, well, Lord is translated into Yah. Okay. But I want to go into, let me see something real quick. I want to actually get where the rendition of Yah is actually in the text. So, and then all throughout the names, Isaiah, Jeremiah. So it's very simple to understand. It's not hard. And I love doing this because it just shows you how technical the Most High is. Let me get the KJV real quick. All right. So when you go into the KJV, it literally says Jah. And when you go into that Yah or Jah, okay, it literally goes back into let me see. That same word Yahweh or the tetragrammaton itself. So that word Yah, let me see. I'm trying to see if it was it's more prevalently in the Psalm 68, but let me get one more. Let me see something. Hold on one second. Okay. Even when you go into words like Jehovah Jireh and things of that nature, which we already went into Jehovah and where that rendering comes from. Go to Exodus 48 and 35. Get a couple more. We'll get a couple more and then I'll take some questions. Let me see if that's what I want. Let me see. Let me see, is it 48 and 35 Hold on, let me see. Then I'll take some questions. Hold on. Let's see. There was one I want in the scriptures. Oh yeah, Genesis. I'm sorry. Genesis 22 and 14. When you go to Genesis chapter 22, verse 14, it says, and Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Now, even though Jehovah is a misunderstanding or a misrendition, we understand that it still comes from the tetragrammaton. It's only a misrendition, and that's Genesis 22 and 14. It's only a misrendition because it added the vowels of Adonai inside of there, but it still comes from the tetragrammaton in essence. But that's in Genesis chapter 22, verse 14. Okay, so with that being said, I mean, I gave y'all a lot of information. Let me see. Sister Leah said, Yahuwah. Yeah, so Yahuwah comes from, remember what I told you guys? Yahuwah comes from, let me share my screen one more time. So look, Yahuwah comes from the pronunciation of it, I should say. Yahuwah comes from the pronunciation in the Greek as well. All right. This transliteration, recorded by Clement of Alexandria around the 2nd century CE, offers a long version of the name Yahweh. All right, Yahweh. All right, that's where the Yahoo comes from. The Yahoo. Some people put the instead of the a at the end. Yahweh or Yahuwah. It comes from the Greek rendition as well. Just like you see 3 different Greek renditions: Yahweh or Yahweh, Yahuwah, Yahuwah or Yahu, I should say, and then Yahuwah or Yahuwah. Some people put the instead of the a, so it's Yahuwah or or Yahuwah or Yahweh. It's just different tomato type of thing. I hope that answers your question. So it comes from the Greek pronunciation or the Greek variants of how they would say the tetragrammaton. But the reason why we do the Yahweh or Yahawah, it because it's more natural to the Paleo, which is the Yod Head Vod Head, which is the 4 syllables instead of the 2. So in the Greek, the tetragrammaton has the 4 syllables. In the Hebrew, in the Greek, it has the 2 syllables. In the Hebrew, it has the 4. I don't know what Adoline is. She might be saying Adonai. I don't know. Adoline. I don't know where that comes from, but they might be trying to say Adonai, if I'm not mistaken. Adoline. I don't know if you're trying to say Adonai. I'm not sure. I never heard that word before. God has no name that man can know pronunciate. Man gives God names based on their ability to perceive him. If you understand the creator. Yeah, absolutely. It's Adonai. Yeah, it got to be Adonai. I don't know what Adonai is. It got to be Adonai. But yeah, I definitely agree. Let me get one more. Let me get a scripture real quick. Let me show y'all something. This is all prophecy. Look at this. Look at this. This is Revelations chapter. Look at this. Go to Revelations real quick. Go to Revelations real quick. Look at what Revelation says. I'll keep my screen. Look at what Revelations 19 and 12 says. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen and white and clean. So look at this. It says that there's going to be names even in the kingdom of heaven that we're not even going to know, that only the Son is going to know. You see that? It says it. We'll just know attributes of his, which the Word of God is not his name, but that's an attribute of his. So no man knew his name but himself. You also see that with the 144,000. All right. Where they will only know a certain song. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, it's going to be things that we don't even know. Like the 144,000, they will only be able to sing, I believe it's the song. Let me double check. So this is just for us to be able to conceptualize the power of the Most High. Yeah, Revelations 14 and 3 says, and they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. So it's gonna be songs that people ain't gonna be able to sing. It's gonna be name. It's gonna be all. Man, look, the Most High's power is unfathomable. I believe his name was lost purposely. You know, the Most High didn't want us. You know, we can't utter his name in this human form. It's just different variations that we can understand. That's why I don't get caught up in, you know, the pronunciation of it, even though I lean towards the Yahweh or the Yahweh, because it's just closer to the Paleo. But you think that's his name, or is that still describing him? Like Ahayah's description. Ahayah is a description of him. You know what I mean? Ahayah is just in the first person of it, of him saying who he is. But, you know, his name, for what we can understand, is he is, or he's eternal. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, I agree. You know, the right pronunciation. I'm not gonna sit here and I'm not gonna be one of the ones to tell you I know the true pronunciation. No? But what I will say is stick to that tetragrammaton, because we want to worship him in spirit and in truth as much as we can, right, family? Con? I gotta look into that. I don't know. I gotta look into this. I won't make a judgment call on that until I look into it. You see? I don't know. I gotta look into that. But yeah, Khan. I gotta look into that. I gotta look into hallelujah. From my understanding, it just means praise Yah. I gotta look into that. I don't know what information says it's Satan's name, but halal and hallelujah is two different pronunciations. So let me see. Let me try to see if I could fact check it. You know, it's good to not have pride. We don't know everything. We learn it. So, from my understanding, it comes from praise. Hallelujah means praise. Praise Yah. Hallelujah. Halal. So it's not halal, just for a correction. It's not halal. It's hallelujah. All right. It's not halal. It's hallelujah. You can actually find appears as alleluia. Alleluia. Right. If you look at it in the Psalms, hallelujah. It's not halal. It's hallelujah. All right. So the Hebrew actually breaks it down into hallelu. It's not halal. Halal, it might kind of sound similar, but hallelu and halal is two different things. Matter of fact, I believe halal, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's Arabic. Yeah, halal is Arabic, and it just means, yeah, it just means the praise. It's Arabic though. The connection, it connects with hallelujah, but it's, yeah, it's not, halal doesn't go from anything that I'm looking at. Halal does not go back to Satan worship or nothing like that. Maybe there's something I'm not saying. I'm, this is not to scold you. Okay. But from my research or what I'm looking up, it just goes into like praise in a different language. Now, did the heathens take names, like for instance, like Baal or Malak? Malak actually means, like Malak Tazadak and all that. Malak means king, but you got, different idols like Molech. Molech stems from the word Malak, but that's just the other nations taking the word king in their language and just calling their God king. That doesn't mean that it's wrong for me to call you Malak. But remember, the word Malak goes back to Molech. But that doesn't mean just because a heathen took the name and, in their own language said, yeah, we're going to call our God king, that doesn't mean that we're wrong for saying Molech. Excuse me, Malak. You know what I mean? Just like Lord, like Baal. Baal goes back into the word Lord. There's nothing wrong with saying the word Lord. Just because the heathens took it and tried to attribute it to their false gods, that doesn't have anything to do with us in our language. It doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't have anything to do with me. My king is, my Malak is my Lord God. My Lord is Christ. That's why it is good to at least have some type of rendering. That's why it is good to have some type of rendering of the Most High's name, so we could put a stamp on it, like my God is Yahweh or Yahawah, right? You know what I mean? So we just don't have to use the titles. Malak is just a title. Adonai or Baal is just a title. These things are just titles. So we don't call our God just titles. He has a name or something that he wants to represent himself by. And what he chooses to let us understand him by today is he is. He is. Not I am. He is. y'all get what I did there? Y'all get what I did? Not I am. He is. Y'all see what I did? So, that is a in-depth breakdown of the name of the Most High. Put sevens in the chat. Yeah, Lord is a title. Lord is a title. That's why, Lord is not his name, but he is a Lord. You understand? So yeah, man, I think that was an edifying class, man. All praises to the Most High. Not to comprehend it too, but the Most High may have more than one name, just like. I mean, there's a name that we're not gonna. There's a name that we're not gonna know. Let me see. I did get your email, Sister Aaliyah. What he chose to reveal himself to Moses was through the name Yahweh. You see, hold on one second. Sister Leah, send me something. I'll get it real quick. Just real fast, real brief. Let me make sure I'm not okay. Yeah, what's up, Messenger of Christ? What's your question? Let me see. Sister Leah sent me something. Let me pull it up. What's your question while I pull this up? Video. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out. I'll check it out, Sister Leah. You sent a video, right, sis? Oh, you talking about her? Yeah, I gotta see what she's saying. Oh, you want to see what she's saying? Okay, let's see what she's saying. Let me see what she's saying. You said stamp, timestamp. Let's see what she's saying, family. Is it? I don't know. This is what Aaliyah was saying. Somebody was saying something. So you said timestamp 4222. Let's see what she was saying. Let's see. Oh, let's see. What was she saying? 4222. Let's see.
I'm a woman of my word.
Hold on, let me see. Let me do something real quick. All right, let me share my screen one more time. And I see there was some questions, so give me 1 second and then I'll get to you guys' questions. Uh-oh, look like I froze. All right, it looked like I froze. Am I back? Can y'all see me? Can y'all see me? Oh, all right, can y'all see me? Salakia. All right, we back. I had froze. Sorry about that. Let me share my screen one more time. So this is for Sister Leah. We want to see what this sister is saying is the Most High's name or what she's pronunciating.
So just wanted to say that. We are also on the road to 900,000 people. So I have to give all kabod, all esteem, and all praise to my Sabi Yahuwah and my Abba, my Adonai, my Malek Kabod, Yahusha Hamashak for blessing me with everything as a whole.
Yeah, she's saying Yahusha. So it sounds like she's saying she going into the Yahuwah and Yahusha. That's what she's saying. She going into the Yahuwah and Yahusha. That's what she's saying. And she's saying Adonai. That's what she's saying, but she's saying it with a different pronunciation.
You happen to buy that you may please take a picture and tag me, send it to me so I can feature you on the website. So thank you to those in advance that have been buying the merch. Thank you to those that have been taking a picture and that have been sharing it.
I'm gonna show y'all
all my merch. No, I'm saying that. So hey, it is what it is. But a cure patient is a lost customer.
Oh wait, I went back too long.
And this is
Hold
the
on. Let's go back to
that you take a picture and tag me, send it to 100,000 people. So I have to give all kabod, all esteem, and all.
So she's saying all kabod, all esteem, so all praise.
All praise to my Sabi Yahuwah.
So she's saying all praise to my Savior, Yahuwah.
And my Abba, my Adonai, my Malek Kabod, Yahusha Hamashak for blessing me with everything.
So all she's saying is she's saying the Most High's name is Yahuwah and Yahweh Shai's name is Yahushua. That's all she's saying. That's all she's saying. And she's saying Adonai. That's all she's saying. All right. That's all all she's doing is saying the Lord's name in different pronunciations like we explained. It sounds fancy, but it's just different pronunciation. Yeah, that's all she's doing. Yahuwah, Yahushua, she's saying she's saying Adonai, but she's saying it with a different pronunciation. That's it. That's it. So yeah, that's it. Let me go up. No, I do not do. We do the dark moon. We do the dark moon. We do not do the light moon. We do the dark moon, sis. We do the dark moon. Thank you for everybody that enjoyed the class. Shalom, the brother Stephen. All praises to you. The water for the love. The water for the love. The water for the love. We do keep the dark moon. We actually have a class on our YouTube explaining the dark moon. Okay. If you are still there, sis. If you are still there, if you want to know our understanding on the moon, let me show you. If you want to understand our understanding of the moon, okay, all praises, sister's still here. Okay, so you go to our YouTube channel, Believers of the Way. Okay, so come to our YouTube channel, go to our lives. Okay, go to our lives. You could go to popular. Go to popular. Okay, so when you go to our lives, go to popular. And then we got the elder did a class. Oh, you know what? I'm not even gonna go to popular. I'm gonna go to latest. So go to latest, go to our lives, go all the way down. The elder did a class. It was a while back. So go down. Let me see. It was a while back, so give me a second. I'll show you exactly where it is on our platform. This is for what moon to know. So can't believe it was that long ago. Goodness. Matter of fact, what I'll do for anybody that wants this class, I'll show y'all where it is on here, but I'll make sure I'll pin it in the comments after I upload this video. So I'll pin it in the comments after I upload this video. Goodness, dang, that was a long time ago. Goodness. Okay, it's coming up. It's coming up. It's coming up. It's coming up. Goodness. But I will pin it in the comments for sure, family. It's coming up. Hold on. Dang, I don't even be realizing that we got this many. Here it is right here. Okay.
It's not visible.
When is the real new moon? Full, crescent, or dark? Found it, guys. Oh, I could have just went to playlist. That's why I need good brothers like Zakar. All right. Somebody. So yeah, go here and when is the real full moon? I'll make sure I'll pin this class. I'll make sure I'll pin this class in the comments on this video tonight, so you guys can go there and check this out. We do the dark moon. All right, we do the dark moon. So all praises, man. I love y'all. We've been on for 2 hours. Email us, y'all chosen. Email us for more information on that. Believers of the Way 144k at gmail.com. Email us if anybody wants any information about joining the camp and so on and so forth. Please email us. But I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I love y'all. We'll be back tomorrow email us. Like I said, email us again if you guys have any questions, comments. If you have emailed and we haven't gotten back to you, we're getting better with that. Don't trip. Email us tonight. I'll get back to you. I promise. And until tomorrow, until next time, I'll see y'all back here for 4:30 class, Western Pacific time. Love y'all. Hope it was edifying. Shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shalom. Whatever shoots your boat, floats your boat, and all praise to the Most High God, Yahweh. Shalom, family.